All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the June meeting of the Capital Improvements Committee. We'll call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda that we haven't done already is approval of the May minutes. Ms. Hall moves. Ms. Campbell seconds. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Next item, approval of today's agenda. Dr. Bringman moves. Yep. Ms. Hall seconds. All in favor? Passes unanimously. And with that, next item is financials. Is that Ms. Clark?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Connie Clark with the Director of Accounting and Finance. So, here. So we move through our first slide is East Los tax revenue collections. So you'll see for East Los 2, 60 of 60 months received for $335.5 million. East Los 3, $425.2 million with 60 of 60 received. And then as of April 25th, $422,000 received for East Los 4. And let's see here. I had a little note. So for East Los 4, we have the board approved an amendment back in the May board meeting to reduce the budget to $481 million. That did not make it into the May financials, so it's currently in process and will be posted by the June 30th financials to bring that budget down from 535 to 481. Okay. This is the tax collections. This slide is the monthly tax revenue for East Los by calendar year from 22 to date. In 24, we received an average of 10.81 per month, and then in 25, we received up through April an average of 10.6 per month. Okay, this is the East Los 2 revenue summary. East Los 2 is closed with local revenue, actual revenue equaling actual expenses. So in the July board meeting, we'll be presenting the consent agenda item to adopt the East Los 5 budget. So 4 will, after our June financials, East Los 4, East Los 2, we will no longer be presenting on East Los 2. Okay. So East Los 3. Total revenue of $460.5 million. This one is still open, and we continue to collect interest income on East Los 3. Okay, East Los 4. Okay, this is East Los 4 for a total of $450 million in actual recognized revenue. So this is the one where we'll be bringing that current budget from 535 down to 481. This is a reconciliation of the use of the unallocated funds this is East Los 2. So that project is closed. So you'll see that that's all been utilized. Here. A reconciliation of East Los 3 unallocated funds. So that balance is $2.2 million is left in unallocated East Los 3 as of May 31st. And the next few budgets are going to show you the budget to costs for East Los 2, 3, and 4. So this is 2. And 3. 4. The remaining slides show the same information I'm sorry, the next few slides show what actually was expended in May. So we show April, the end of April financials, the end of May financials, and then the difference would be what is actually spent out in the month of May.
You spent $1?
That's time, that is rounding because Access rounds. Okay. And East Loss 3. We've got those balances to show you what we spent in East Loss 3. So a total of 5.9 spent in the month of May for East Loss 3, 5.9 million. And then East Loss 4 spent in the month of May, a total of 11.9 million. And that shows you by project, comparing actual expenses. And then the last few slides show the same information, grouped by project and by category. So you'll see each project and then like the new school or new or replacement schools, land, addition or modification, renovation. So on each of those slides, I won't go into all the detail on that, but that gives you just a little bit more information by category and by project. And we have that for 2, 3, and 4. So, do you have any questions?
Ms. Hall?
I had a constituent ask me which bank is the custodian for our East Plus funds. And that's something I'd never thought of.
Which bank? So we keep that in the master fund, which is, Larry, can you help me describe that?
The actual funds themselves, we keep in what's called Georgia Fund 1. It's really more like a
Investment account,
state
the state
investment
investment
account. So it's not a local bank. It's a banking within the state of Georgia. And it's called Georgia Fund 1. And most school districts and county governments utilize Georgia Fund 1 for most of their major withholdings. Not only school districts, but the city and the county has funds over there too. But we don't have any East Plus funds locally.
So it's not a profit-making?
We do make interest off of it, and the interest.
I know we do. I'm
Yes.
saying the bank this master bank makes no,
Profit, that I'm not sure.
They're not losing money on it.
I'm quite sure they're
Now,
not,
was
but I can
gonna
double check.
say, It would be interesting for the public to know what the process is and how that, because it's something I really never thought of and had no answer for.
Yes, yes,
we
ma'am.
have
We can
other
get more
funds in
information on
local
Georgia Fund 1. Fortunately, over the past, as long as we've been using them, the interest rates that they give us and other entities, government entities, no banks or anyone else can compare to it. So that's why we just stick with them.
And this has been since East Block 1.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's lots and lots of money.
But we have other district accounts in local banks, right?
Yes, we have our major bank is Truist. And we have, I think, some student activity in Bank of America.
Is that governed by law, how we decide which bank or what the best conditions are? What makes us
We do
choose?
RFPs for our local bank. We do RFPs, I believe, every 5 years for our local banking. So it's competitive, and we do it every 5 years with, I think, 1-year extensions up to 7 years.
Okay, thank you.
On the 2.2 unallocated in East Loss 3, do we have that penciled in somewhere?
Not on my side.
Yeah.
That would be on capital projects.
Capital Projects has a plan for that? So we can close E3 at some point?
Yes.
Let the record reflect, a lot of people are shaking their heads yes. All right.
And to go along with that, I know Ms. Clark mentioned that we will bring a budget for East Blocks 5 next month. And I think we will bring an agenda item to officially close East Plus 2. We weren't sure. Internally, we were debating, do we just close it and move forward, or do we bring something back to the board and officially say we closed it and we're moving forward? So we're just going to add a consent item to the agenda next month to officially close East Plus 2, and you will no longer see those on this report.
All right, thanks. Any other questions on the financials? Ms. Hall?
And I don't want to politicize this, but I'm just thinking we have several credit unions that help our teachers a lot. Savannah Schools, the one that our education fund, what's her name? That's through, yes, that's through Woodville Tompkins. Is there a reason why they can't benefit from something the school system is so deeply involved in? And like I said, I don't really want to start anything political, but since it was brought to me, it has me thinking about things that we just take for granted, and maybe we could be helping firms that help us and help our teachers.
That's something, let me get more information on that. I know historically, we have not, because of, say like for the major banking, because of the number of branches that they have, we go with the larger institutions because of the number of branches. But we can look at it to see what we can do locally. So give us a chance to look into that and we'll get an answer to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions on the finances? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms.
All right.
Davidson, EV evaluation tool, or E5 evaluation tool.
Yes, sir. So good afternoon. In the last board meeting, we gave you a brief preview of this tool. So we decided there was an opportunity to create an evaluation tool that would help us ensure transparency, consistency, and alignment with our strategic goals as we assess facility and infrastructure needs across our district. So this will help us be very transparent and objective while also being very data-driven. So the key evaluation categories that you will see in the tool: safety systems address life safety risk, infrastructure conditions evaluate our building systems, our instructional impact, so does it enhance educational delivery, and then the project scope and feasibility are all some of the categories. So as I mentioned, safety systems, it does include access control, surveillance, fire protection, sprinklers, indoor air quality. So sometimes when we have a environmental challenge to overcome, it might be in there. The infrastructure condition is generally what we think about when we say the FCI score. So this is the infrastructure of the building, the roof, the HVAC, the plumbing, electrical. So that is heavily tied to that FCI score. The instructional impact does talk about how does this project enhance the educational delivery? Does it support some opportunities for enhancement in our learning environments, including modernization, flexible spaces, specialized labs? Does it improve student outcomes and ensuring it aligns with our curriculum needs? Then the project scope, complexity, feasibility, resource availability. This talks about the readiness of the project. So do we have space to swing the students to? Do we have the staff to oversee the project and all those pieces that go along with the complexity? Then another category is the past EastBLOS commitments. Are we doing what we said we would do? If we ran out of funding in the past EastBLOS, it's important to make sure that that project is prioritized in this EastBLOS and honoring our commitments. Monetary savings is another category, so making sure that we do highlight the opportunity to reduce future operational costs, eliminate lease payments, improve efficiencies, things like that. Future planning, so the future planning addresses our anticipated needs for enrollment growth, demographic changes. So that is like what's coming in the near future based on the demographic or the changes or anything in the community that's driving those fluctuations. The site capacity is what's going on right now. So is there overcrowding in that space? Is there underutilization in that space? And how do we need to handle it right now? So the future planning could involve some enrollment growth in the future, and then the site capacity is maybe we are overcrowded right now. And then the technology, so supporting critical technology infrastructure, those network upgrades, classroom, AV, all those important pieces. So we took a stab at identifying the weight that's associated with each of those categories. The reason you will see safety systems is only 10% is because we will not wait for the next eSPLOST if we have a safety issue to address. So that is why that one is at a lower weight, which is a little bit unusual because we do promote and highlight the priority for safety and security. The infrastructure condition, it does have the heaviest weight, so this is leaning to that FCI score, but it identifies where do we need to address roof challenges, HVAC challenges. So this helps us make sure that we are being good stewards of our assets and taking care of those assets appropriately and not allowing them to continue to deteriorate. The instructional impact is very important, so ensuring that it does provide optimal academic engagement and opportunities there. Project readiness and resources is 10%. If we do not have a swing site that's available, that, it comes into play there. Past eSPLOST was given 10% to honor our commitments, monetary savings, 10%. The site capacity is 15%. So if we currently have overcrowding at a site or underutilization at a site, that was given a little bit higher of emphasis. Future planning was given 5%, and then technology 5%. Then each of those is scored from 0 to 5. So the score reflects how well the project meets the established needs, and it encourages a focused approach. So you will see that a 5 means that it fully meets or exceeds that category or that need. The 0 is not applicable. So each category was then rated. I have given you some very general, basic projects to see how the tool will work. So the new elementary school was rated at a 3 for safety, a 4 for infrastructure, a 5 for instructional impact, so on and so on. So you would then, to calculate the composite score, we took the 3 in the safety category, multiplied it by 10%, and that gave you the number of 0.3, added those all up, and it gave you a composite score of 3.85. So if these were our projects, then the first one, the new elementary school, would be our first priority. The next one, the HVAC replacement, would be the second priority, and then the deferred gym renovation would be the third priority. And we've kind of broken down a little bit more about how we rated each of those numbers in the above scoring. This is just a broad example to show you how we imagine utilizing this tool.
Dr. Brinkman?
So, thank you for creating this. This is great. Will we then be looking at the projected timeline and scoring all the projects and moving the timeline around, or?
Great question. So after we receive your feedback and approval of the tool and the way that it is designed, we will go back and evaluate the projects, which will then guide us on the timeline. So it takes the data-driven approach and not anybody's personal preference on which project moves forward first or last, and so that way we are.
Well, and I'm sure, no matter which way we go, we'll still have to have some flexibility, because even some projects that score higher might have to wait, because all the projects that score higher might not feasibly be able to run at the same time based on some of the things that, even if they had some value in the rubric, it's still might not be able, I fully understand that. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Hall?
Ms. Davidson, how might we affect climate change, slow climate change down, reduce our carbon footprint? What category could that fit under?
So sustainability and how we can better be resources of our environment. I would say, it could impact the infrastructure condition, right? So if
Well, just something to think of, and
yeah,
I think that would be very productive for us if we could show that we have that in mind.
okay, we can definitely consider adding that category.
I'm sure Ms. Grabowski thanks you as well.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Yes, thank you. I really do think that we need improvement in the area of our future planning.
Okay.
Because being on the west side of the county, as soon as we build schools, they're over capacity as soon as we build them. So we really need to, when I saw the weight of 5%, I'm thinking, is that weight
Enough.
5% enough? Because it's really a problem with long-term planning and analyzing the current situation, the current capacity.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
every day when I drive down 21, I see bulldozers and I see more bulldozers. And they're continuing to build out there. And I know that as soon as a school is built, you probably end up putting mobile classes out there.
Yes, ma'am.
We did that 30 years ago at Georgetown when I was teaching there. As soon as we built the school, we had to add on. And Rice Creek, another example.
Yes, ma'am.
So that weight concerns me of being 5%.
Okay, thank you for your feedback on that. We can go back and definitely look at that future planning and see how we might elevate that weight. Okay. Yes,
I mean, we don't approve things in this meeting. I mean, I like the process. I do. I just, again, think like Sunny and I have had conversations and then hearing from Tanya, even if things aren't weighted perfectly, there are going to be times that, oh, that project and this project are the same score, but this one is where we know the population's booming and that's an old building that needs to be replaced, but yeah, so
and
there's always going to have to be some room for
there will.
what makes sense even outside of the score.
Right, absolutely. The goal is to have a tool to help us put together the timeline. But we know that there will always be items that come up, unexpected opportunities to work through. And that is something that we will, as we utilize the tool, have to be very fluid and come back and reimagine what is the next step in the process to this. But it is, it's our first little draft to try to create a guide in how we put these together. And it will help us explain to our school partners why their project isn't first, right? Because as a school principal or a school individual at that school, that it should be first. They're advocating for their school. So this helps us identify why it was not first on the list, why it's second or third or fifth.
Thank you. Perfect segue into one of my thoughts after we had an impromptu CIC meeting at the last board meeting, is that operations understands all of it. The timeline is like, yeah, it makes complete sense. Yes, it's their this is my shopping list at the grocery store. I understand everything that's on this and what aisle it's on. Where even people that touch it occasionally like us don't always see everything. And some of the conversations I had after the last board meeting, I think we could add some slides to these timelines that kind of discuss that, especially if we go with this type of prioritization, because then somebody's gonna be like, but it scored that priority, why? So that we say, I kept wanting us to hire more people to do more buildings faster, and like, well, we don't have swing sites. Well, that makes complete sense. I will forget that in 6 months, and we will have this conversation again. So if we have it in the slide being like, this school, like so this big timeline of like this thing, but the bigger picture timeline of like the pieces that I know y'all have got it with strings probably somewhere where this school is going to come out and we're going to build this school. And then this is where those kids are going to go, so that document lives somewhere that is easy for us to send to the principal, or for y'all to send to the principal. Be like, well, let me show you the bigger picture and why we fully understand your school needs to be done tomorrow. It can't be. I think you have that knowledge, and I'm sure everybody could answer that question. It's just, I think, a one-pager or a two-pager in here that makes it completely transparent. So I can just be like, hey, principal, this is the big picture and this is why. Because there's so many it's not checkers, it's even more than chess. There's just so many moving pieces, and like if one little thing goes awry, yeah. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Ms.
that
Hall?
feedback.
I'm laughing because I told Mr. Cashbar I wasn't going to talk today. But Dr. Watts, what I like about this is the fact that we seem to be more and more doing self-evaluations. And to me, that's a real strength. The more self-evaluations we have of whatever it is we're doing, to me, the stronger we are. So I like it for that reason, and I hope we continue in all of our departments to do this. Okay.
All right, thank you. Next is the program schedules for E4.
All right. Afternoon.
Afternoon.
First, we have the program schedule. This is for the remaining E3 and E4 projects. Based upon that previous discussion, we no longer have this document, have the E5. And when that process goes through, we will develop and put the E5 projects back on here. Just one comment I do want to make, however, is this still does show, you see, at line item 171, the campus fencing. This was discussed at last month CIC, and we were hoping that we could get better clarification on the fencing, but Campus Police wasn't able to make it to this meeting and to show you these particular schools and what type of fencing is going to be required for them. And so we've got some dates in here, but obviously we're not going to move forward with any of this until you have, we have the assurance from you that this is the direction you want us to go in. And then in the project updates, we have a checklist of work that we have to complete this summer. We've been,
Dr. Brinkman?
I just wanted to clarify. I know that on the timeline it said, has that already gone to bid and people have been awarded a bid for those fences, or no?
no, that.
Okay, so
I'm
that's been
sorry,
pushed.
that-
It's
yeah.
on the timeline there, but it's been pushed back further.
Been pushed,
Okay, just wanted to
right.
make sure that we didn't, that some contractor didn't win an
There is-
award and
there-
we're like, sorry, we're still waffling. Okay,
No,
good.
exactly. No contract has been awarded.
We have to wait for campus.
Thank you.
We're waiting for campus police to sit down with you.
Yes, yes. We were hoping that they would be able to do that this month, based upon their discussion last month with you, that they would look at the individual sites, the ones that we have on that list, and show you the type of fencing that they are going to be proposing, the gates, and then we could move forward and proceed with the bid for that.
Okay, do we have a timeline for when they will have? When they will have that meeting?
I think one of the first things that we need to get feedback from the board on, because there was a discussion about if we wanted to move forward with fencing at every school. So going back to the genesis of the conversation, is that a commitment that we are making as a body, that fencing will be included on all of our campuses? And then from that step, Then we get into the what kind of fencing and how much fencing. But I have heard waffling on, is fencing essential, or is it only essential in certain places? And so until I can really understand, is that a commitment or not, we can't even get into this discussion of what kind of fencing.
Ms. Hall and then Dr. Brennan.
Okay. It seems to me, it seemed like campus police was telling us we must have fencing at all our campuses. That's what I recall that they.
I wouldn't say must, but they were making
Rec-
their
okay,
argument for, it was a
recommending that
recommendation.
we
Yes.
do. And my answer to that was, no, it doesn't, each site would dictate its own design. We have beautiful, what we didn't want, what we all agreed on, was we didn't want prison-like fences. We all agree, I think we did on that. I was riding by White Bluff Elementary on White Bluff. Beautiful fencing there, but that might not be appropriate, you know, say at Savannah Arts, they don't need a fence to me, of course. But, so it's the design that's important, I think. We'll listen to campus police in terms of what they feel is necessary safety-wise, but we want to see the design that's
Sure.
appropriate, that makes a school look dignified and, you know,
Right.
wonderful, not prison-like, and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's how I,
Dr. Brennan.
I'm definitely on the side, and I look at it from a safety entry standpoint. Well, let's take like a Georgetown or what some of the other schools that we have. That you've got fencing that goes up to two sides of the school and wraps around the back. That usually goes around, if it's a K-8 or a elementary, it's going to incorporate the playground structures, rec fields, things like that, and makes it to where there is only one entry point at the front of the school. I think what we were all really not wanting was what was, I think, kind of already happened to DEH. And what was the pitch for Jenkins was, we're going to fence the whole dang thing in all the way to the road. So if you were to go out to Georgetown right now and it's got fencing that, again, abuts the sides, one main entrance, that's the only way you could get in without having to jump a fence. Of course, if somebody wants to be nefarious, they're going to get over that fence. But if you were to tell me that you were going to take that fencing all the way to King George Boulevard and incorporate the entire front of the school, then it looks hideous to begin with, and then we do start getting down to that institutionalized locking people in for maybe the safety of some cars in the front would be the only pitch you could give me. And this is coming from the person whose car was broken into in the middle of the day at Beach High behind fencing. So if somebody wants to get to it and do something bad, they're going to. It keeps away some people, but I think it would at least creates a safer environment. And I'm definitely more on the side of a little bit fancier fence than our construction, chain fence, yeah.
So if I'm combining what both of you have said, fencing is important, but the design or the aesthetic and the location and how much is really the question to be answered. So I think we also need to somehow codify that in our design guidelines.
Well, of course.
and if you want an example of what not to do, look at Byers.
Right, because there are some we need to go back and fix. So it's a go back and fix and it's a go forward.
Ms. Campbell?
Okay.
So I think I said it in the last CIC meeting too, and I'm all for hardening the schools if we're trying to protect students. I do think the location should necessitate which ones we decide to do, see the benefit of them, measure what it is that we've protected from in these situations, and then decide where we're going to spend money. I am not of the mind that we should fence all of the schools. I also don't like that they begin to look like prisons. And if a lot of the issues are happening within the schools and not coming from outside, if we have schools that don't have fences and they're getting broken into or vandalized in any way, I think we should strongly consider that, but I think we need to take this piecemeal and not make a bold, statement of we're going to fence all of our schools.
Dr. Howard Hall?
And most importantly, we need to be sure to involve the principals because they know what's best for their schools. For example, Woodville Tompkins has an upper campus and lower campus. So that'll be quite cumbersome trying to decide how to fence that particular site. Whereas DEH is on the highway, so it's important to have that fence that faces, the highway as well as the property that abuts the rear area of the school. So it just depends, but we have to make sure that we do consult with the principals because they know best.
I got it. Thank you.
I agree with everyone that's spoken so far on this topic. I guess my question or my concern would be, in adding on to what Dr. Tanya Howard Hall said, as far as the principals being able to chime in, do we offer a opportunity for the community to chime in, because this will impact the community as far as aesthetically and things of that nature. And when you do for one school and don't do for another, you don't want schools or communities to feel abandoned or left out just because we may think it will not be aesthetically appeasing when they think that it is necessary. So I think those are things to think about as well.
So I hope that the board understands our renewed commitment to getting feedback from teachers and community and principals in every design that we have moving forward. So that almost goes without saying at this point, because that is what we are going to do moving forward. Is everybody understand? Is that?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Basically, Dr. Watts, that doesn't need to come from us. I mean, that's something that can all come under the principal. Any community involvement in community, that's something that, so we just have to hear from the principal when everything is finalized, as opposed to
The
it
principal
becoming-
would probably have more opportunity to
Yes.
give input as we kind of go through the process, but we want to make sure that we give teachers and the community input and insight. And if I remember correctly from the last meeting, even be thoughtful about how we do that, not bringing teachers out of the building, going to them as much as we can, so we don't build band room doors too small and they can't get the instruments in and out. So I think we have to have a varied approach as we get feedback. But also, there's an understanding that there's choices and trade-offs. So if we're going to make fencing a priority, there's a cost associated with that. The aesthetics, there's going to be varied costs depending on how nice it is. So that means you may have to give up something to get something, or the cost of our buildings will continue to expand and grow. So we have to figure out how to do this in the most cost-efficient, yet aesthetically pleasing and safe way. There's a lot of things to balance.
Right.
Ms. Campbell?
Question, while we're talking about this, and we're not sure where we're going to go next, the 4 schools that were prioritized in the last meeting, Butler Beach, New Hampstead High, and Jenkins, are we still planning on fencing those regardless of what we're talking about now, or are we still?
I think we have to go
Speculating.
back to some of these things that you all are highlighting, like the use of data, that would be like community data to substantiate what's going on in the community. I think we would have to get feedback from stakeholders. Like, I think we have to go through some of these steps that you have outlined, but what I'm hearing from you all is we would commit to fencing. How much, what it looks like, is indeterminate until we go through some of these steps.
I guess my concern with that, I'm all for waiting, pumping the brakes until we get more details and can make educated decisions. One thing I am concerned with in my own district, though, is New Hampstead.
Yep.
As students, like the community built up around it so quickly that though it's offset from the main road that has a school zone sign now, but is just a thoroughfare of trucks, et cetera. kids are crossing the street without a crosswalk, without a fence kind of guarding I think some of these are very important, and maybe we should speak about those independently at meetings going forward, if that needs to happen, where it's not just, let's talk about fencing altogether, because I know that New Hampstead absolutely needs, for student safety, something maintaining their safety as they walk to school from right across the street.
The ones that we've listed, and we need to go back and redo a couple, I think those are still a priority.
Okay, thank you.
So how do we move forward with the timeline for achieving those ideas? With the priorities, and as well as bringing forward what we just talked about, how soon or what type of timeline do we have in mind, or do we have one
I'll
in mind?
defer to the team on timeline, because I think it has to do with resources, bid process.
Yeah, obviously,
Capacity.
we're going to need to talk with campus
And
police, and I believe
It's
the next
nothing that can be
CIC
done.
is for a couple of months, right? So, I mean, a CIC meeting obviously would be the good place to do this.
So we're not talking about before start of school this year?
No, we could.
I don't see that happening.
Gotcha.
But
Go ahead, hold on.
Yeah.
Ms. Hall, then Dr. Brinkman.
Dr. Watts, this doesn't need, because it needs to be thorough, doesn't mean it needs to take forever. So if capital projects needs additional personnel, David talks all the time about, do we have enough people in capital projects to do what we need? It doesn't need to be so cumbersome that, it takes forever to get accomplished.
Right, I don't foresee it taking forever. What are the barriers? What are we still waiting for campus police to weigh in on?
So part of it will be working out the design aesthetics, and then the bid, the timeline. It's more of kind of deciding exactly to what point will we do the fencing and what part of the design aesthetics. But I don't think it will take forever. The burden is it's not as much of a heavy lift from the capital project standpoint. It's more of a community and campus police perspective, and then the timeline it takes for bids is the other challenge that we have to work through.
It's not our internal capacity, not on fencing.
No, ma'am.
Dr. Brinkman.
Yeah, so I'm sorry I missed last meeting, but so this was discussed last meeting, and campus police was brought up, correct?
Campus police presented, yes.
And then it's been a month, and they haven't been able to make a meeting with you to discuss this. Is that what I heard? I'll go back and play the tape at home tonight. I believe that's what you said, is that you are still waiting on having a meeting with campus police.
There has been.
Yes or no?
meetings with-
Did you say that? Yes or no? Have you been waiting on campus police? Because it is unacceptable
Okay.
that we are a month in waiting on campus police. If they are about safety, and if it's about safety. And that should happen this week. That's a sit down. I feel like if any of us wanted, I'm sure you could have Ms. Campbell out at New Hampstead tomorrow talking about her fence. So if campus police can't make a meeting happen, that's unacceptable. I don't know, I'm one person on this board, but I'm getting really hot if it's been a month waiting on them to say something about the fences at schools.
I think it was more of we were wanting to get your feedback
Yeah, I
before
was
we
gonna say.
proceeded with it. So I don't want to say that campus police is,
I'll go back tonight and watch the meeting and listen to the words, because that is not how it was presented 15 minutes ago.
All right, Ms. Hall.
I just want to say, campus police, I remember Chief literally flew back in from wherever he was to be at that meeting so that he could be there to represent campus police, if I recall. So I think that in context, what you were saying was you needed to hear from the board, really, before you, there's no need to sit down with campus police if they don't know what we want.
yes, ma'am.
I believe that's more the, so now that you know more what we want, and that it kind of comes down to the design, who is going to design these fences? Then you have something to sit down with campus police and discuss. Is that?
I think we definitely wanted more clarity.
Yeah.
because we did not feel like, I felt that there was waffling
Yeah, okay.
about fencing, how much, do we do it at every school? The last presentation was more about sharing the importance. Campus Police wanted an opportunity to share more about the importance of having fencing to generate more discussion. And I don't see an issue moving forward on those projects. Do we have a slide that lists the ones? The ones that we
Those
have already committed
The
to.
priority ones as far as Beach,
Yep.
Jenkins, Butler, and New Hampstead. Those four were identified as a priority. We do have a plan that is being proposed. Campus Police has put their input into it, and, you know, they're very simple. I mean, it shows a site and it shows the type of fence that is being proposed, but we're not going to move forward with it and bidding it out and awarding it, certainly not awarding it, until there has been consensus on the board that, yes, this is what wants to be done at these campuses. But, you know, we're ready to move forward. It's just a matter of getting that meeting put together so that we can move forward with this.
Mr. Moss?
So this was on today's agenda, right? The discussion of fencing was on today's agenda, correct?
It was,
Yes.
yes.
Why is
Well,
it?
it was, but I thought we took it off because I knew Chief Enoch is doing professional development, so he wasn't going to be present today. So I thought we took it off the agenda, but,
Yes, it's not on. It was,
because there
but
were
once we found
slides in
out
here,
that
and we took
the
them out
Campus
last
Police
week.
couldn't be here, it was removed, yes.
Okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, what kind of commitment can we have, going back to Dr. Brinkman, what kind of commitment can we have from Campus Police and you guys to get together and get this thing done? I guess I'm echoing what Mr. Smith asked as well.
You have our 100% commitment that it will get done. And by the middle of next week, by next Wednesday, we will get you a timeline. I do not want to overcommit, though, to say we're going to get these done before school starts. Because there are a lot of contingencies that are beyond our control, materials,
The vendor's
our
timeline.
vendor's timeline and all of those things, but I will try to have the team map out so you will at least know if your schools are one of these schools, when to anticipate the work will start and end by the middle of next week. So, team, we can get that meeting.
Absolutely. We will-
Together.
We'll get that scheduled.
Ms. Campbell, and then Dr. Howard Hall.
Super quick. With New Hampstead, one thing that I would ask, since CIC is here and can hear me make this ask, I think that working with City of Savannah, as I met with them across the street a while back, months ago, with a parent, they had to help us with this crosswalk situation, and whether or not we're at an agreement with the fencing situation, having the crosswalk there would be life-changing and maybe life-saving. So I hope that we still prioritize getting a crosswalk there for these kids, lots of which walk to school from across the street, whether we have fencing decided upon or not.
Yes, I will reach out to the person, Rodriguez, to find out, because that was, I believe, a city commitment.
It was.
Not our commitment.
They just wanted to coordinate with us because of potential fencing in the future and how they may have to take down a tree line, part of the tree line. So it definitely needed our input. But yes, that was a city commitment.
Yeah, I'm on it. I'll get on that today.
Dr. Howard Hall?
I didn't attend the last meeting, but I did hear that Butler Elementary was one of those schools, and that school is in my district. And I do know that the Cloverdale community is a tight-knitted community. Butler is nestled in the back area, so we will have time to consult with the community regarding that fencing. And it's also another issue, and we discussed at the last neighborhood meeting, there's going to be a school that abuts next to Butler. That's our new, the Montessori school. So. that's
And that
another-
is the fencing that I believe we are referring to for that particular school. It is the agreement that we've worked out with Simco around where we're going to be putting fencing. And I'm not 100% sure, but is that the Simco property or our property? Because they may be making the decision about the design, not us, depending on where the fence sits.
Right, because
I think it's on their property
And using their East Bluff
and using
allocation.
their East Plus money. So they would be in charge of getting community input and all of those things, not us. It's not our fence.
but it says Butler, so it makes it seem like it's our fence. If it's not our fence, it shouldn't read Butler, it should have Simcoe.
As part of the evaluation with the campus safety team, I do believe there's some fencing that's going to go around Butler as well, so that we can keep the playground and the other spaces. But it definitely is a partnership because of the community center and the recent Simcoe transaction, highlighting the need to make sure that we keep the students safe within certain fencing.
So can we include Simcoe along with Butler? For
Oh, they're
clarity?
changing the name?
No,
Absolutely.
I'm saying for clarity, as it pertains to the fencing, since there's two schools that's actually sharing a fence, pretty much to say. You know,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll make sure to identify that it's two separate schools.
Ms. Hall?
Dr. Watts, because you mentioned, and Ms. Campbell mentioned crosswalks, the situation with our student at Savannah High, that principal is also asking that we move forward with the city in terms of getting a crosswalk where that accident occurred, because there are about 30 to 35 children who come from Savannah Gardens and use that street. So if you're already working with Officer Rodriguez, I'd like you to please begin that conversation also.
I was not aware of the request at Savannah High for a
No,
crosswalk.
no, this just
Okay,
came up.
resurfacing.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to be the cranky old guy again. Lots of stuff are going through my head, kind of like, when did we get so excited about fences? I've been asking for 10 years for us to finish security vestibules, and those still aren't done. I've been asking for 10 years to upgrade our metal detector access points. Those still aren't done. Been asking for 10 years to have an armed SRO in every school. We're getting there. We're almost there. I'm not against fences, but like, when the hell did we get so excited about them? I guess is what I'm asking. The second thing is, for 10 or 15 years, Chief has been saying, you know, the strategy is layered security. So I will put $50 into a pot with the rest of the board. Chief is not going to come back and say, nah, these 7 schools don't need fences. Right? I mean, when in doubt, if we have the money, put a fence, because that's another layer of security. So, and then I put a pin in that comment. Then second, I'm all for community input and principal input. What I'm not for is an ad hoc process like this appears to be right now. Hey, my school needs something. Hey, I heard from this principal they need something. All of that input is good, but what we need is what you've outlined here for our prioritization process. On the front end of any design, in the design guidelines, here's the analysis for security needs, both at the site and then around the adjacent neighborhood. Ms. Grabowski, for years, has been talking about, not just talking about the school site, but walkability, bikeability, bike lanes, sidewalks, travel routes, crosswalks, et cetera, and being on the front end of that in the conversations with the city and the county. We had that same conversation when we were doing the stadium at Islands. People park at Islands, go across Whitmarsh Island Way, and almost get killed in the dark. That's been a 5-year process of trying to work with the county to put in a crosswalk. Let's put a process in our design guidelines on the front end, so all this stuff is thought about holistically with every project. It's not an ad hoc. The other thing I would say is, you know, the board, we allocate funds, we allocate budget money. We don't know anything about fencing, where it should be, whether it should be there or not. And I'm all for principal input again, but when we do ad hoc principal input, we spend $300,000 to repaint a school because somebody didn't like the color. And then that principal was transferred 2 years later. And what does a principal know about safety? I don't mean that pejoratively. What I'm saying is they can provide feedback about the school they are in, pragmatic real-world experiences, hear the things we're experiencing from a security and safety standpoint. But we have to be mindful of the fact that principals get moved every 2 or 3 years. Some staff are there long-term, some are not. Let's have a holistic process to analyze this. Community input's important, but we're also going to have, just as much as we're going to have input from the community on what this fence looks like, we're also going to have input on, well, why do we need a fence and that other school doesn't need a fence? What's the message you're sending us? Some communities may want a fence, some may not want a fence. Some may say, why do we have to have a fence and this other school doesn't? It's a class issue, it's a race issue, it's a geographical issue. So I'm not anti-fence, I'm not pro-fence. Let's have a process that we apply holistically to every project. And the final thing is, the trade-off comment is absolutely right, but if you look at the history of East Blost, every project has had a trade-off, and then they get something else in the next East Blost. So I go back to what I said at the earlier CIC meeting in May. We need to have a folder, an institutional history folder for each project, so we remember things that have been discussed for that particular site and project. There are many sites where the community or a board member or somebody lobbied for something, they got it, and there was a trade-off, and then East Blost, the next East Blost or the East Blost after, then they said, well, wait a minute, we don't have what these other schools have, give that to us too. So we just need institutional knowledge and a process in our guidelines so that we're doing this holistically and not ad hoc. And again, where the heck are my security vestibules? We're still not done. I'm just going to end with that. Thanks.
Agreed. I think one of the most important things that is emerging for me in this conversation is the need for a process and how we prioritize and make decisions around fencing. And while I know many people may feel like we delayed moving on the Beach, Jenkins, New Hampstead projects, this discussion was important because what we did not want to do is to rush into moving on a project and then make some of the same mistakes we've made before. And then people aren't happy, and, you know, then we spent the money, and it's hard to go back and do it again. So the delay sometimes is deliberate, and I'll own the deliberateness around not pushing these things forward until I could understand more from you all what was expected. Fencing started before I got here. So I don't know all the history, but now I know more. I can guide the team in a better way. So I appreciate the feedback.
All right, let's move on. You shouldn't have said anything that wasn't on the agenda, Mr. Huttinga.
I'll take full responsibility for that and try to be brief the rest of it. This is our checklist for our summer work. It's a lot of work. We've been gearing up to be in this position where we can successfully complete all of these. Again, I've gone through these in detail just as recently as the last board meeting 2 weeks ago, last month in CIC, so I can move through these very quickly. But we got to complete Windsor Forest, obviously, and move in, Bloomingdale and move in, the DEH Athletic Facility, DEH CTAE, get Montgomery Swing ready and move J.G. Smith over there, get Largo Tibet ready and move Georgetown over there, complete the Early Learning Center at Formey, and move those students back from Schumann, and then complete that remodeling of Savannah Arts Gym and have that ready for the start of the volleyball season. So again, moving through these quickly, Windsor Forest, on schedule to have its CO. Furniture is being moved in. The boxes from the staff that were packed up in the old school have been moved in. And this is coming along very nicely. Of course, there's going to be a lot of temporary things happening because we need to remove that old building, and there'll be a lot of temporary parking that's going to be around the school. But it's all being planned. Ribbon cutting on August 8 for that school. Bloomingdale, they have a TCO already, temporary certificate of occupancy. And the, am I moving ahead? Okay.
Ms. Hall?
You were saying the ribbon cutting is August 8th, and I meant to ask Dr. Watts why the change from the original date, because I'm not sure I'll be in town for this, and I wanted to be there. So is there, that was just a convenience thing? That does not indicate that there's a problem
No,
with anything with Winds Forest?
Definitely no problem.
I wasn't in town.
Yeah, I think it really had to do.
It was my fault. I wasn't in town
Oh,
for
I
the
see.
initial date.
Oh, okay.
Pearl Jam canceled that
No,
concert.
this is vacation.
Okay,
I was gonna drive back in town, but they said they could move it.
okay. Thank you. That's a relief to hear.
Okay, and at Bloomingdale, you got some pictures there, updated pictures, just showing furniture in those spaces, all ready to go, ribbon cutting for August 1. The Fieldhouse Athletic Complex, again, in the final stages of completion. The major work out there is some exterior stuff. So with all the rain, we just have to hope that we get some good drying weather so we can get that track surface on. But we certainly are targeting now to have a TCO. I've got July 14. That may slide back to July 24 because recently we just have not been able to get the gas utility to get their line into the school, and that's needed for the emergency generator, that gas. So that's getting worked out with them, but that might push that TCO back. But again, ready for football coming this fall. CTA building itself, they're in the process of moving the furniture in there. They have equipment already delivered, and they'll be setting that in place. Montgomery swing site in the process of getting ready for that for J.G. Smith. A lot of exterior work happening now. Interior-wise, as you can see, the furniture is getting moved over from J.G. Smith and getting put in those classrooms as they're completing. Largo Tibet pretty much in the same situation, not doing as much work at Largo Tibet, but working on getting finishes cleaned up in those classrooms, a new playground area, and of course the furniture getting moved over from Georgetown. Early Learning Center has been ready now for a couple of weeks. They have all their furniture in place. Staff is even over there operating right now. So this project is finished, and we're looking forward to that ribbon cutting on July 30. Savannah Arts, we need to remove the old gym floor, put the new floor in, do some painting, clean up in the upstairs, new bleachers. That work is all ongoing. You see the floor has just recently been removed by repurpose, and so that is going to be taken away and repurposed. And so we're on schedule to have that new floor ready for July 22. J.G. Smith, again, now that they are moving out and going into Montgomery, we can get started with that project. We need to get the site permit completed and then get that demolition work going. And so we're working with the city to get the permits that are needed, but just as soon as everything is removed out of there, we're able to get started with that project, and that's going to be a very, very busy 10, 11 months coming up. Islands, this project has been bid, and we will have the contract award ready for the July board. And after that, get the contract finalized, they can go out and start working on the visitor side, getting ready to put in the new bleachers and also to start prepping for that field house that needs to be built on the visitor's side. Some other updates, just quickly. Again, Pulaski, we have some work to do there. We've got to complete that front drive. Prior to that, we have to have some electrical relocated. That required Army Corps permit approval. You know that takes time. Well, we just got that approval just a couple of days ago. And so now that work can proceed, and then we also want to keep moving along to get those modulars set up that are needed out there. And then the roof replacements, the Gould School had been awarded just recently, and that's going to get started in about 2 weeks. That contractor's expected to mobilize. He has some summer work that he has to get done before the kids come back, so he can get that going. Our next project will be Johnson to bid, and of course Georgetown, that replacement of that big metal roof is going to be as part of the construction project. But Myers and Woodville Tompkins also we want to get into bid. HVAC, the Islands High School has been bid. We're going to be awarding that project also on July 9. And the Woodville Tompkins is finishing up design, so we want to move that project along to get that in bid. And Savannah High, a ton of work has been done on HVAC over there, replacement of those rooftop units, all the whole entire system, and that's all wrapping up nicely to be completed this summer. We want to get the rest of the schools that do not have emergency generators, we want to get those completed also. We're going to get a proposal for the design of that. It won't make July board, but it certainly will make the August board. The security fencing, we've talked about that. And at Port Wentworth, there's still a lot of areas there that are required to have some renovation work. A number of departments are moving over there from Bull Street. And so that work is all in design, and we'll need to also continue along with construction as quickly as possible so that we can have those spaces completed and ready when they're ready to move. At West Chatham High, the site study, that wetland delineation, we did get a second report, so we have a much better map of what's happening up there. You can kind of see a little bit of the delineation points, but we got much better ones. And now we've got to start looking at what work we need to do in order to delineate how much area we really are able to free up for building. And of course, the design professional RFP, that's due on July 10. And so we're looking forward to getting that. The Bull Street, again, talking about the historic and programmatic input that is going on right now. There was one meeting, and there's other meetings scheduled for that group, that committee, and we'll be ready to move into that project and do the abatement work just as soon as we're able to move all of the staff out of there, and then, of course, get that RFP for the design, which is a very important one also.
Ms. Hall?
Dr. Watts, you had invited us to participate in the meetings. Did that take place? Because I never heard back anything. I think it was for June 10th, but
There are currently scheduled 3 meetings. The first one took place a little over a week ago. It was very successful. We had a variety of people there representing colleges and universities, historic preservation, architects from the community, and various other stakeholders. We toured the building. We got some insight and input on some things as it relates to how we will restore and renovate, so it was very productive. We have 2 more meetings scheduled this summer where we'll bring that same group of people back together and continue to get that external feedback on how we move forward. And so we will continue to extend opportunities for the board members, our board members, to participate in those meetings. We just have to be careful about how many are present so that we don't overstack the meeting. So the next invitation should be going out before the end of the day for the next meeting, which is next Thursday.
So since I didn't hear back, how do we make sure that our invitations reach us? Because I didn't make that meeting, the first one, because I didn't hear
So
back.
you're on a list, and every
Oh, I
time we
see.
have a meeting, you'll get an
Oh,
email.
it's a-
Yes, it's a recurring list, and we're adding to it as it goes. So if you RSVP the first time, you'll automatically be included moving forward.
All right, anyone else? Thank you. Dr. Howard Hall? Mr. Huttinger, hold on.
First of all, I'm excited about the ribbon cutting that will be taking place soon at DEH with the wonderful athletic complex. But what I would like for you all to do is to provide us with a comprehensive review of the scope of services for all of the athletic facilities per school.
I have that request. I haven't shared it with the team yet. But I'll share more details, and we will definitely do that.
Thank you.
All right, next item is the design guidelines. Mr. Scott.
Hi, good afternoon. I was
afternoon.
asked to provide an update to last month's discussion related to the construction design guidelines that we have in the capital projects group and how we're going to update and create a document that will better represent what we feel like we need to have as a district for our educational infrastructure projects. So based on the feedback that I got last week or last month's meeting, we initiated a formal review of the CDG beginning in the summer of 2025. This is already underway, and I'll talk about it in a minute. It'll proceed by division instead of looking at the document as a whole. The primary steps in the initiative will include review, revision, and input, starting by RRI by capital projects, which was just completed last week. Then we're going to move to RRI by SCCPS stakeholders as appropriate. We're looking at creating working groups, we are creating working groups of external stakeholders, such as design professionals. I'd like to have contractors in there as well. RRI also by the CIC as requested before, and then the final review goes into operations leadership, and then it gets adopted into the construction design guidelines. So why are we doing this? As we talked about last time, we really want to streamline the design guidelines. They're too cumbersome, and it's difficult to find that information which we feel like is critical for our technical professionals to design and construct facilities for our district. There's a lot of information in there that's good information. It's good general information that we expect our technical professionals to be familiar with all the time. So we want to make sure that the design guidelines, particularly given last month's discussion, but not just in light of that, but just in general, reflects our values and priority. And this is particularly important in our upfront divisions. So we're going to use this iterative process that'll capture and synthesize input from a variety of the disparate stakeholder groups and make sure we get that. So our review schedule is start with Division 0 and 01. Those are general requirements. Part of the question is why we have 2 divisions that capture general requirements, but we currently do. That's a major portion of the design guideline. That represents about 30% of what we have. The idea is to have new divisions 0 and 01 ready for adoption by 12/1. Fall 2025, we're going to move to other divisions as required. Some of the divisions had substantial revision. Some of the divisions had substantial revision in the last go-around that was just presented in January. We'll evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. We're going to do a more deliberate process so we have more stakeholder input as required for that, to make sure that we have a more formalized process to gather stakeholder input and a more useful arrangement in order to facilitate actually getting the input back that we need. The idea is to have those new divisions ready for adoption by February 1st of 2026. Then we'll move to version 4.0, the CDG, Construction Design Guidelines, in March of 2026. And they will be subject to a quadrennial review thereafter. So we will understand that. One of the other things that came out of last month's meeting of the CIC was a strong, certainly a strong guidance from the board or from the CIC that, particularly up front, our partners need to understand what we stand for and what we value most in our educational infrastructure. So we took that and took a first stab. This is certainly not in any way, shape, or form trying to subvert or circumvent your input, because it's a top-down process, but we took a first stab at developing these based on developing a draft of these based on what we heard last time. So pillar one, or 3 pillars. Pillar one is academic excellence. As you can see there, the pillar is to create environments that maximize student learning and achievement, educational spaces that are not only safe, healthy, and comfortable, but also actively promote academic rigor and enthusiasm. Someone who's spent a long time in education, I do not understand how you can expect students to excel if they're not enthusiastic about the process in which they're expected to do so. We have a variety of tenets. Again, this is a draft. Not only do we welcome, we expect input from both the CIC and the board as a whole on what really should be here. Because again, as was discussed last month, the idea is that someone can read the first page of our design guides and understand what's most important to us as far as the philosophy behind our educational spaces. That is the expectation. And so we want to make sure that it is clear, it is unambiguous, and that it is also succinct so that someone doesn't have to posit on what we're trying to do. Second pillar is sustainability, which came up quite a bit earlier today. The idea here is to design, construct, and operate educational facilities that minimize environmental impact and maximize resource efficiency throughout a building service life. Again, the tenets there, we want to create buildings that are not only environmentally responsible, but also economically viable and socially beneficial. I know myself at the last meeting, I believe it was the last meeting, I heard a lot about the inability to make full use of facilities because we don't have sufficient, or our acoustical issues prevent that. Well, then that's not socially beneficial, and it's important, so we should do those things. We want to prioritize the use of renewable, recycled, and locally sourced materials to reduce the environmental impact of production and transportation. We have locally available materials, we should use them. A good example is that I mentioned last time is if we're doing outdoor spaces, we have primarily gravity-fed structural elements like concrete pads and things like that. Why not use non-metallic reinforcement? We do have a bamboo farm that's not too far from here, right? Or tabby. If you know what tabby is, that's the material that was used for hundreds of years in coastal environments. Involves oyster shells. I've certainly contributed to the supply of oyster shells that we have in this area myself over the years. We want to ensure healthy and comfortable indoor environments for building occupants. And another thing that was brought up that I'm very, very strong agreement with is the idea of reducing life cycle costs. It is always going to be a struggle to balance first cost versus life cycle costs. The biggest challenge in that is educating people. because everybody's in favor of life cycle costs until you start writing the check, where they understand that first costs are impacted. So we need to do a good job of explaining what those life cycle costs are and where the savings will occur. And there are a variety of locations where we can do that. And there are also ways that we can do that where we can incorporate educational programs, for example, in our STEM schools, that are around, that revolve around those, solve some of those problems. There are methodologies to look at some of these problems, even at the high school level, that our students could participate in. Third pillar is community integration. Again, that was something that came through very clearly. We want to actively engage our students, our staff, local residents, businesses, organizations, and all other stakeholders, hopefully I didn't miss anybody, to ensure that our projects align with community needs and values, benefit the community, and address local needs, right? Our tenets that will undergird this pillar is we want to foster in trust and goodwill. We want open, and the word I didn't put in here because it's overused, but it is true, open and transparent communication, right? And it's more than just telling them. We want to collaborate with them. We want to make them part of the process. That will help us build positive relationships between our design professionals, construction companies, and our local stakeholders. One of the things that was brought up in last month's meeting was this idea to have the construction companies and the DPs go back to the schools and talk to them. Why not have them go to a PTA meeting? Or y'all don't call it PTA anymore. Yeah, that meeting, all I can remember is an old song from the 60s about Harper Valley, and whenever I hear that. We want to develop more formalized tools. We have a tool now for prioritization of infrastructure. We want to develop more formalized tools and approaches to keep community stakeholders informed. We want to have regular communication blasts. We have, from what I can tell in my limited amount of time here over the last 2 years, the district has a very effective public relations arm and communications arm. We need to do a better job taking advantage of it, both at the school level and also at the district level. And finally, we need to better understand and address local concerns. It's certainly easy to say, I understand your pain. It's a little bit harder, a little bit more involved to say, and we're going to do something about it. That's what we need to do. So we feel like, or I feel like that what I heard last time was we want to prioritize meeting the needs of the community, right? Because we want them to be happier about these schools that we keep asking them to pay money for and pay their tax dollars for. So wouldn't it be nice if they were a lot more excited about it, or even more excited than they already are when they come in? So again, this is a draft. It's a first shot across the bow. It was my attempt and Capital Project Sonny's attempt to try to collect the information that we heard last time, to collect the sentiments that we heard last time, and try to put them together in a framework that we could work from. We in no way, shape, or form feel like this is a finalized document or that it completely represents what you were trying to communicate last time, but we welcome more input as we do that. So with that,
Ms. Hall?
any questions?
Just a little earlier, I mentioned how good it is for us to self-evaluate our projects, but I don't like the idea of it saying we're going to de-emphasize best practices and industry standards, because we're going to expect that the people we're working with already know that. If we could, I guess maybe it's just the language. It sounds, whenever you say de-emphasize best practices, that doesn't sound good to me. So in
It's
the
up at the
first,
front. Yeah, no,
under
I said it, and-
streamlining the
yeah.
CDG, de-emphasize.
Let me, yeah, no, that's a great point. I apologize. Obviously, I explained it very poorly. The idea is to try to take out that information that our design professionals already know. When we talk about best practices, we design our reinforced concrete schools to ACI 318. That doesn't need to go in our design guidelines, right? We expect our design professionals to know that. There are,
I mean, what is
Microphone.
You see what I'm saying?
right, no, I understand.
What is our proof that they understand.
I think that's what the RFP process is about, is that whenever you are awarding something, you identify the technical competence of the facilities. But it's not that we're trying to get rid, what we want to do is emphasize best practices here in Savannah. That's what I feel like, and I'm sorry, this is just a personal opinion, it's not up to me, we'll do whatever we need to. But I personally feel like that what we really want people to know when they come here is what we think is most important in the schools. For example, the example I use is if you're going to build a new stadium out near the islands and you're going to have a beautiful scoreboard, somebody better put an engineer stamp that includes the ASCE 7 WIN codes for that, which just changed out here recently. Those are the kind of things that I want to make sure that everybody knows, so that we don't get an engineer stamp from somebody who stamped a sign in Dothan, Alabama, which is not quite as worried about hurricanes as we are. Those are the things that I want to make sure nobody misses. But in no way, shape, or form, and I obviously explained it very poorly, in no way, shape, or form do I want us to expect less technical rigor and less quality in our processes. I just think that we want to make sure that everybody understands really what makes a good school down here.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Thank you. We just pretty much reviewed our guideline policy last month, design guidelines. It was a policy recently, I remember, because I recall a lot of this language in one of those policies. Do we perhaps may need to go back and take a revisit to compare?
This is the construction design guidelines. I think we reviewed part of our overall procurement policies before. That's what we looked at the last couple months.
I have to go back and look, but
Yeah.
I know a lot of this language sounds
We
quite
talked about design
familiar.
guidelines at the last CIC a little bit, but we haven't done the comprehensive policy overview and review.
I have to pull it because I know I remember reading just recently, the last meeting about design guidelines. It was within one of those policies, but anyhow, I was just, when I heard the language, it is some things to consider.
Right.
So
Absolutely. We have an active and functioning design guidelines version 3. What I heard at the last meeting and what Capital Projects heard at the last meeting was that certainly CIC felt like there was a little bit of Groundhog Day, in that they hear we're going to have input from certain groups, we hear we're going to do these things. And so that initiated our leadership in Capital Projects to say, let's start sooner rather than later, trying to address the concerns or the points that are brought up, as opposed to waiting until our next scheduled update for them, and create a document that we're all happy with right now, and then move to a quadrennial review of it. That's the idea. And in particular, what was brought forward was for the early divisions, the general guidelines is to have the CIC, and then perhaps associated with that, the board or whoever else, go through that in more detail, because that really exemplifies what we expect out of our schools and the information that we want to present. The other divisions get much more into the weeds on things like thermal moisture effects, roofs, door hardware, variety of other specialized things. But it is the upfront information that I felt like we had gotten clear guidance on, that we want to make sure that represents what we want to do, and we want to make sure that CIC and the board and others have ample opportunity to ensure that that's the case and reflects their values.
I'm going to say a few things that it's nobody's fault in this room, but you mentioned Groundhog Day, and I'm having like deja vu all over again, because we started this review process 3 years ago. Then we had leadership changes. Then we started it again in earnest last summer. And now we're looking at we'll have it done in 9 months from now. And part of me, so let me back up. That's where I was starting from. What I heard today and what I've heard in the last year, though, has been fantastic. Like a well thought out process. I like the start of the pillars. I understand the approach. It's logical, it's well thought out, but we're 4 years behind where we should have been. And at this point, I think like what I'd really like to accomplish is that we have core updates done before we start bidding out E5 projects. Because if we wait until March of '26, I don't know how many E5 projects we're going to have bid out, but the big ones will be out there. And then, what's the point? Because these design guidelines are going to go into effect mid-cycle, and, maybe by E6, if there is one, we'll actually implement them. So I'm not trying to up or speed up the 9-month process, but I think on some core issues that I saw a December 25 deadline for the general condition stuff. Keep in mind, like at least my goal, and I don't know about the rest of the board, is to have these updates in place before we bid out significant E5 work. Otherwise, what's the point on minor renovation projects? A couple of smaller things, maybe the next CIC or even a board meeting, maybe an informal board meeting, we can carve out a 30-minute discussion on these pillars, because the design guidelines are meant to tell our professionals, here's what we expect, but it's also an expression of board policy. We believe in sustainability. We believe in incorporating learning opportunities. Whatever board policy goals are when we're spending East Bluff's money is also in that document. And historically, the board's had a discussion about what do we want our policy goals to be, and then the board has voted on final design guidelines, and that needs to be incorporated into the schedule. I saw in there, review by CIC and then final adoption, but if there's a board review and vote on the final design guidelines, which is an expression of board policy, that carries a little more gravitas, and it says to district staff and also to our vendors, this is board policy. We expect you to follow board policy. Because part of the challenge we've had over the last 5, 6, 7 years is ad hoc deviation from the design guidelines. And then the other thing I'd like to mention is I'm all for streamlining and modernizing. As you're going through, and I know this is going to be difficult because of staff turnover and maybe record keeping, but for the vast majority of the things that are in the current design guidelines, ask the question, why are they there? Instead of just taking them out. So things have been added over the years for various reasons. Some may be dumb, some may be irrelevant now that codes have changed. But I remember significant discussions 5, 10 years ago about trying to limit the scope of design choices a architect may have for door hardware, because every school had different hardware and it's hard to stock and maintain, replacement parts. So maybe we're going to go to 3 different types of door hardware or 2 different types of HVAC systems. I'm not saying we have to do that, but a lot of things were added for maintenance, back-end maintenance, ease and scalability as well. So instead of just going through there and pulling things out, have a reasoned discussion about why is it in there and what's the goal that we were trying to meet, instead of just streamlining it as well. But big picture, I appreciate the renewed focus, the thought that's gone into the pillars. Maybe the next CIC or informal, the board can discuss. What do we want our policy goals to be as a district when it comes to our buildings and facilities? And that's the starting point. We set those, and then the revisions can happen from there. And then take a look at the weeds of our review and what can we get done before anything major goes out to bid, so our updated goals are in place. Thanks.
Couple of responses to that. The first is I'd really like to clarify. There seems to be, if I've misstated it, there are active design guidelines right now that have been approved. We built schools that have just opened with those design guidelines. There are active design guidelines that are guidelines for today. In last month's meeting, we created an affirmation for our design professionals to have to affirm that they followed those now. So that's the first part is that the idea is that we want to do a better job of responding to where we feel like we need to, update and revise our documents, but we're not starting from scratch with there. So if I gave that impression, I was wrong. The other part about streamlining is never to just take information out. That's why on this slide, you can see there's about a 6 or 7 step set of feedback loop. And the idea is to get all of our professionals, for example, we would expect the maintenance department to tell us all about door locks and make sure we have that information in there. So again, I feel like I may have given the wrong impression that the idea is in whole cloth remove sections. That wasn't it. What we want to do is make sure it's easy for somebody to find out what we really need in Savannah schools. The third thing I'll say about the timeline is that is all doable. But I will say that in last month's meeting, what was made very clear was the need to have more stakeholder input across the board. That was, in my opinion, a very clear set of guidance that we got. That will take some time. Just getting that information back will. So we have a set of design guidelines. We want to create a process where we update them and where we have them done well. We decided as a group in capital projects, given what we heard last time, is that even though we just finished this in January, let's try to make sure that we're taking input and acting on that input. And that's kind of where we are. So I understand your concern about the time frames, and I certainly get that. But if it's a one level review, then those time frames can be readily met. If it's 6 or 7, it's harder, including the time that y'all are going to need. So it's doable, but that's something we'll have to work through.
And we're aware there are existing design guidelines. They've been there since East Blast 1. The issue is, twice since I've been on the board, we've been through a formal review process. The red line's been given to the board. We've talked about it. We voted on it and approved it. That stopped many years ago. And then schools were built and projects were completed. And the question was, who approved that? Because that's not in our design guidelines. Oh, somebody approved it somewhere. So we're trying to regain some oversight and stability and control of the process. And so we know there's design guidelines in place, and we know that they're currently being reviewed and updated. We need to get back to what we were doing before, which is actually holding our vendors accountable and our staff accountable for following the design guidelines, which the board said, this is our policy goals, and this is what the district wants done from a construction standpoint. Otherwise, what's the point? That's it. So, and I'm not blaming anybody in this room. I'm giving you a history of we're trying to get back on track. I feel like we've already given a bunch of time, but there's new people in place, and we want to do this right, not quickly. All I'm expressing is 9 months from now is a long time.
And can I clarify, because I think I heard something different in the last CIC meeting, so I want to check myself. I did not necessarily hear that we wanted feedback on the guidelines. My understanding is when we are in the midst of designing a specific school project, we want to get feedback from teachers, principals, and others. And that we just need to clearly articulate and adhere to that in the guidelines, not input on the guidelines.
What we also talked about getting input from our architectural community, our vendors, our construction partners.
On the guidelines.
On the guidelines. But like, I'll go pull the minutes from a CIC meeting about 10 years ago.
Having the same discussion.
Yeah, but we just held a public meeting, and we invited all of our architects and engineers and vendors to come give us comment on our procurement process, our procurement policies, and our design guidelines. And we had about 2 hours of people from the community saying, this schedule of values is off, or you really need to expand the scope of allowable concrete use. And, you know, that's how we got input. So there's ways to do it and not take 9 months. That's all I'm saying. But big picture, this is great. We're moving the right way, and I know there's new leadership in the room, so I appreciate everyone's efforts. Anybody have anything else? Connie, anything else you want to say?
We got 2 hours before our
You,
next
sir?
meeting, so we'll filibuster.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for attending. 15.